Taylor, it has now been 5 hours without Instagram.
It's getting rough. It's getting rough.
It's getting
I don't know
really.
how much longer I can take this.
I don't know either. I've since this happened this morning, I've been etching every single hour into my wall that I'm without Instagram, and I keep checking it instinctively.
I mean, do we even exist anymore? Like, if we're not online, like, do people even know what's happening in the world? Like, where are we? What's going on?
I don't know how we're going to tell people that we're live right now if I can't do it on Instagram.
I mean, I can't find my basket weaving class group on Facebook, and how am I going to make that special pumpkin basket for Halloween? I'm not going to have time. This is crazy.
I can't look at Will talk about how he's a best-selling author. I don't know what I'm going to do.
This is a rough day in the history of the world.
And scene, guys. Yeah. So if you guys are on social media at all, or if you keep up to date with social media, you know that Instagram and Facebook are down. Big problems. But luckily for you guys, it doesn't mean that you don't get to see PragerU content. If you weren't aware, PragerU has its own website, PragerU.com. We have our own app as well, the PragerU app that you can download on your phone, so that when Facebook and Instagram go awry and you can't get your content, when you can't see our lovely faces on those platforms anymore, you can watch them at PragerU.com.
Yeah, PragerU.com and our app. We also have a Roku app, by the way, which works and is cool. So
isn't that pretty cool, guys? You can watch our faces on your Roku.
Big tech can't keep themselves up on the air, but PragerU is still here.
Wow, we are stronger than Facebook and Instagram. Now, you all know Will is not here. He is, of course, doing his book tour, but we have Will on the show today. We did a little check-in with Will to see how things are going and to talk about it.
Oh, I thought you were referring to that guy sitting over there.
Yeah, he's also... Look at that.
That's really... Did you guys do that on Friday? That creeps me out.
We did do it on Friday. So on Friday, since you weren't here, Taylor, we had Will here. I did an opening skit where I spoke to Pillow Will, and you were a basketball with Wilson's face on it from the Tom Hanks movie.
Well, should have been a volleyball because that's my sport, but
I know.
It's fine.
We printed a volleyball and put it over the basketball.
Oh, wow.
Just for you, Taylor.
Okay.
Now, let's check in with Will, see what he's up to, and go over a couple of stories. One is Pitbull and his America rant, and two is a crazy leftist that we found on TikTok. Surprise, surprise. Guys, I just simply can't get this guy off the show. He continues to beg me, even though he's not even here in California, to be on the program, and I just don't know what to do about it. So coming from Fort Myers right now is Will Witt. Will Witt, thank you for being on.
Guys, really happy to have you on the show, Alma, to come and join me for my show. Taylor, to all you guys. I mean, it's an honor to have you guys on my show. So thanks for coming.
How does this caller keep getting past our screeners? I don't get it.
I literally don't get it. I tell them time and time again, do not let Will Witt on this show. And somehow he manages to get on it. I don't understand.
Time and time again, it doesn't work out for you, Alma.
Time and time again, of which, you know who I wish I had on the show right now? I wish I had Pitbull on the show. And here's why. This is an article out of the Daily Wire. The title is Pitbull to those who hate the U.S. F you, go to Cuba and you'll see how much you appreciate the United States. Now, I think before we even get into the story, the first thing that we should do is watch this video of Pitbull saying this at his concert. Let's listen to it.
Mr. Worldwide Speaking Facts.
Is this to whoever the doesn't like the United States of America, may God bless you, but you at the same time. If you don't like the United States of America, go back to the countries that we from, and you'll see how much you appreciate the United States of America.
And there it is. That's all she wrote. The profanity, of course, we will bleep out for your viewing pleasure, guys. But that's what Pitbull had to say at his most recent concert.
That was some hotel room service, if you're talking to me. I mean, that was wonderful. I do like seeing celebrities with some sort of bravery coming out and saying something like that. And look how crazy it is that we even have to make a video about this, to have a celebrity come out and say that they love America and like comparing it to other horrible countries around the world, and to say like, oh, wow, he's brave for saying that. How screwed up is America right now that's now bravery in this country?
Yeah, and it's really sad. And just to give the audience at home some context, for those of you who are not familiar with Mr. Worldwide, he is from Cuba.
Who isn't familiar with Mr. Worldwide?
You know, I don't know, because
he's worldwide.
He's worldwide. How could you not be familiar? But I'll read you some of his previous quotes, because, you know, that was not the most eloquent we've ever seen Pitbull. I love the God bless you, but F you at the same time. Iconic. But here's what Pitbull had to say in a previous statement. He said, the reason I can have this conversation is because my family comes from communism. They fled communism. They had everything taken away from them. Everybody got murdered. Everybody got killed. I think that's ground for not liking communism. And then he said during an interview last year, that's the reason me, being a first generation Cuban American, I look at freedom and I appreciate that S word. I appreciate opportunity. I appreciate anything that you give to me. And that comes from the fact that when Castro took everything, and I'm looking at what's going on right now, the only person here that's hot, it's Castro. He's going, y'all did it with a virus? S word. Y'all took the world with a virus. Y'all gotta be kidding me. It's so funny to hear Pitbull's words in my voice.
It's funnier to hear your self-censorship. I think that's probably the funniest part.
Well, we run a family-friendly program, Will.
No, I know we do. I'm just saying it's quite comical.
But no, look at all the celebrities that we have coming out right now and going against the wokeism that we're experiencing. We got Nicki Minaj with her whole Twitter debacle. We got Rihanna wearing the T-shirt of saying that thinking is soon going to be illegal. And now we got Pitbull again. But Pitbull's always been in the space of doing this, so I'm proud.
Well, I don't know about Rihanna. I'm not going to say Rihanna for sure was like that. It almost feels like it's almost one of those leftist messages that says that that's all about, talking and being loud. It's like, it's not like Rihanna came out and said anything about who she's with or anything.
Right,
so
right.
I would just, I take these things with a grain of salt. I take these things with a grain of salt, all of the celebrities coming out and doing stuff, because it's like, they're still celebrities and they still are beholden to many people. And unless you're going to come out and be incredibly strong about it and like actually stand up for something, then it's tough. I get it's good to do what you do and say certain things, certain truths, but I wish that they did more. It's like the Texas abortion ban. It's like, I wish you did more. Yeah, you did something, but I want more.
Right.
I want you to just do it.
I agree with you.
Say how you really feel.
But I think when celebrities come out and do stuff, they're reaching so millions, obviously millions and millions more than we'll ever reach with our show, but they're reaching apolitical people, people who are apathetic to politics, and they're seeing a celebrity that they see maybe as a role model, or they simply like their music or their art, and they're thinking, oh, well, this person's political. I wonder what they think. And then hopefully this is introing a lot of people into the political space, and hopefully in a way that is, conducive to our side and helping us out.
Yeah, I think they're mostly not ideological people. They're very much just like, they go with the flow of whatever the mainstream, whatever they're supposed to say as celebrities. They can pretty much just toe the line, usually. But I think what we're seeing is a lot of these people are kind of in that quote unquote uncancelable status where they've already ascended to the level of fame and wealth and prominence in culture, to where they can have an opinion that contradicts the mainstream narrative. And it's unpopular, but they're big enough to kind of overcome that. And it's cool to see that, like, just on the fact that they are not ideologically possessed and not beating the drum of wokeism or whatever the mainstream narrative is. And they just have common sense. I don't think they're like to Will's point, they're not going very far. They're not making these huge eloquent statements. I mean, that was hardly eloquent what Pitbull just came out of his mouth, but they just have enough common sense to call out BS when they see it. And like the Nicki Minaj thing, she definitely was not an eloquent thing, but they're just like, y'all are acting crazy and I'm not going to go along with this. And like, that part is refreshing to hear and to see. Yeah. And, but I think it behooves people like the Will Witts of the world to take that and give some context. That, you guys see how crazy this is. Exactly. So here's why it's crazy. It's because the people who you've been in cahoots with and have been supporting or have been content to be associated with are pushing this radical, crazy agenda, and they're unable to stop themselves. And you have been until this point complicit in that. So now, why don't you use your platform and your voice to call it out and give a more eloquent takedown of what's actually going on?
Yeah, you don't have to be eloquent and highbrow and intellectual to say, you know what, I love America. And for those of you that hate it, you should feel lucky to be here. You don't have to be eloquent to say, things are going crazy right now, and we're living in this haze, and we need to cut through this haze and find out what the truth is. So I appreciate anybody in any space who's willing to come out and say anything at this point.
Wait. I didn't say that you had to be eloquent and come out and be eloquent about what you're saying.
No, I'm agreeing with you in the sense that, of course, they're not saying enough, but I think that the people who do have the verbal ammunition to, make a dent in this ideology need to springboard off of what they're saying and say, like, you guys see how crazy this is? Well, here's why, No, I'm
just saying I hate how held on a pedestal these people are, when reality is like, there's celebrities. If they had these thoughts, if they had these ideas, why didn't you say them sooner? Especially like Nicki Minaj talking about on her Instagram Live. And she's like, oh, listen, there's a lot more celebrities out there than you think who actually think these things. It's like, okay, well, then you got a bunch of losers who people hold on some sort of pedestal that don't actually do anything about the things that they believe in when you have that platform. But then all of the leftist ones they see who they totally disagree with are doing things the opposite. And then it's like, you still don't say anything. It's like, I don't have much respect for people in these types of positions if they're going to be like wishy-washy about something. It's like, you should be like so strong. But Pitbull seems like the strong one.
Yeah, but people's first instinct is self-preservation. And I think there's a difference between obviously the Nickis and the Rihannas and the Pitbulls. Pitbull's been open about his views for a really, really long time. But your first interest is self-preservation. So I think what they did is waited till they made it in Hollywood to really say what they wanted to say. And although I don't agree with that statement, of course, we could have used these words a lot sooner, but at least we got the words. It would have been much easier for them to not say anything at all and to sit under the thumb of Hollywood and the entertainment industry and then go along with the talking points and the wokeisms, but they chose not to. And the fact that they even chose to do that, it's better than most celebrities are doing. And regardless of whether or not we praise them, I think we should at least acknowledge it was probably a good thing to do. And yeah, it's crazy to hear somebody say, you got to hear somebody say, I love America, and hear a crowd of tens of thousands of people scream and chant for loving America. That's a rarity these days. So I mean, kudos to Pitbull.
Yeah, I look at it more as like, it's not so much that these celebrities deserve a huge pat on the back and like, oh, how courageous they're being, but it's more like a signal to me of what's going on in our culture right now, that, that the mainstream agenda has been pushed so hard without regards for common sense or facts or whatever, that people who are otherwise largely apolitical or just celebrities who do have a little bit to lose are now just are so perturbed by what they're seeing that they're like, you guys, this is BS. And they're just willing to say that. And it's not so much that they're so it's not so much that they're courageous. It's to me just more like the fact that they're saying anything at all is a signal to me that there's chinks being made in the armor of the mainstream narrative.
Yep. Because so far it's been just a wall in front of us.
But it's just like, you have people like these people on Twitter and on the internet, and they'll be like, oh, if a celebrity said the wrong thing, they'd be like, oh, I don't care at all what any of these celebrities think. They're all leftist losers. But then one celebrity comes out and says something that is mildly conservative, and then every conservative is like, this is the bravest person in the world. It's like, it's pathetic. It's like, why this guy, like, these people make tunes for top 40 hits. Like these are not the people. I get it. I'm not saying I don't get it and why it's good. I'm just saying, like, don't put these people on this high pedestal now just because they agreed with you on one little thing for a second, because then the next day they're going to say something else and it's going to be totally against everything that you said. Like, I forget the example of where this happened, where someone, like a celebrity, came out and said something that was kind of conservative, and then they totally shifted on another thing.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that happen.
Oh yeah, we see it happen all the time.
These are just celebrities.
Yeah.
Look, Will, don't you talk about my girl Riri like that, okay? I'm with her. I'm with her to the end, ride or die. Anything she says the rest of the way.
With bad gal Riri. No, I mean, you shouldn't pedestalize anybody. You shouldn't even pedestalize Will or I or Taylor. You shouldn't take anybody.
Just Hot Scott.
Just Hot Scott. Yeah. That's
just
exactly
Scott.
Right. That's exactly right.
You know how you know that Pitbull's a good guy, though? So they did this competition. This was years ago. Mm-hmm. It was like a competition for like, if a certain place gets a number amount of votes, then it was through Walmart. And they're like, Pitbull will come and perform at your Walmart, wherever it is. And all these people trolled it. And they got it to be like some little town in Alaska. And so Pitbull was a good sport about it. And he went all the way to this like tiny, tiny Walmart in Alaska in the middle of nowhere and like performed for all these.
Yeah. And he killed it. He did a good job too. Like, he gave it his all.
I did not know that story. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is amazing. You can tell he's a good guy.
The same thing happened with like Taylor Swift, where they trolled her. It was like, I forget how they trolled her. They're like, I'll do a concert at your school. And then everyone voted for like this School of the Deaf, and it won as like the top school that she had to go perform at.
And did she do it?
And then she didn't go and do it.
Okay.
No,
that's kind of probably good she didn't.
No, that's a whole different situation. It's a good thing she didn't do that. Now, speaking of trolling people, I wish this next video was trolling me. I have a question before we get into it. This is from Libs of TikTok. Were you guys gifted?
I know. I don't actually think I took a gifted like course evaluation or whatever, and I was like just below the cutoff, so I wasn't gifted.
What about you, Will?
Mama Gump told me I was different, but I don't know.
Is he stupid?
Yes, I guess I was gifted. I mean, I went to a gifted and talented school
Okay.
for my entire life. So yeah.
I'm like Taylor. I took my gifted test in elementary school. I believe I was like 7 years old, and I got to the part where you had to make like the patterns out of blocks and look at them and see like where the pattern had gone wrong or something like that. And I got one question wrong, and it took my gifted status away. So I didn't get the little G next to my name. But guess what? Apparently
you could have been smart and successful.
I could have been very smart and successful, but
dang.
I did not get that little G next to my name in elementary school. But
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'd love to be on the show a little bit more, but I only do shows with gifted and talented people. So obviously this show isn't for me.
I'll send you over to Dave Rubin or Carol Swain or somebody like that. But it's a good thing. It turned out being a good thing because apparently being gifted is a sign of white privilege and white supremacy. So let's look at this video.
I mean, I can say it more directly. You weren't gifted, talented, or smart. You were just most likely, statistically speaking, an upper middle class white kid. And so your school district rewarded you by giving you the title of gifted. And then they use that as an excuse to pull resources from your Black and Indigenous, low-income, disabled, neurodivergent peers and gave them to you. You benefited from the system of white supremacy and classism because you could uphold it as more likely than not an upper middle class or middle class white kid. You were the reason and the excuse for withholding resources from marginalized students, and you were complicit in accepting them. And I know you were a child, and I know you probably didn't have a lot to say, and you also didn't have a lot of perspective. But as an adult, if you're still holding on to this idea that you were a gifted kid once, when all that meant is that you could thrive under classism and white supremacy, unpack that.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah, let's unpack that. First of all, how long did it take her to remember saying Black, brown, Indigenous, disabled, neurodivergent people? Because that's gifted, if I've ever seen gifted. Now, it just blows my mind. From my perspective, when I was in school, gifted meant that you just got more homework. I don't remember any resources being shifted from students like me over to students who were gifted. All it meant was your deadlines are a little bit sooner. You got to read a few more books, and you have a little bit more homework than everybody else does.
I went to a gifted and talented school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to spoil the name for you all, but I got sent to a gifted and talented school for since first grade or second grade until 8th grade. I went to a gifted and talented school.
Were you surrounded by white men?
I mean, no, that's what I'm like. That's the very strange part, is that there were many, mutants, gifted mutants. There was Beast Boy and Starfire, all these mutants. It was crazy. No, but it was like all these different people from all there. I'm not just saying this, and I know it's kind of anecdotal, but regardless, I was one of the only, there weren't very many white kids.
Mm-hmm.
There definitely weren't that many white kids at my school growing up. There were a lot of Hispanic kids. There were a lot of Black kids. And so a lot of those kids were my really good friends. There were a lot of African kids. My two best friends growing up were both two African guys, Yonatan and Gassan. Those were their names. How African are those names? How those names don't sound too white supremacist to you, I'll tell you that much. But all the people in my school, it was very diverse.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't anything about white supremacy.
I have the opposite story of you. My school was not really super diverse. I mean, we definitely had a bunch of Hispanic kids, a bunch of Black kids in my school. But as far as being in AP programs, I was definitely surrounded by a bunch of white girls and boys and maybe a couple of other Black students. And I still graduated valedictorian from my conservative rural area. The idea that being gifted and getting something based on purely your merit and your education has something to do with race is just so beyond me. But it's an effort to look at everything through that lens. And there's never been anybody to say, well, there's more gifted kids that are white than Black in most schools. Although I'm sure there is, but that's more of a cultural problem than it is something that has to do with racism. Teachers don't go to teach to hold back Black kids and brown kids and Indigenous kids and neurodivergent kids. If anything, teachers are more sympathetic and work harder for kids who have special needs or who are disabled or neurodivergent, and they want to see those kids succeed. Everybody wants to see those kids succeed. So to think that by virtue of being gifted that you are somehow contributing to white supremacy is ridiculous.
So what you're saying is poor kids can be just as smart as white kids?
Poor kids are just as smart as the white kids. We love that quote.
Well, there are also more white people. There's more white people.
Yes.
If there's more gifted white kids and there's more white people in America, then statistically speaking, yes, there's going to be more white gifted kids.
Right.
Obviously, she is not gifted to understand that.
No, and it's important to talk
Basic
about
math.
what is so much more influential in education is socioeconomic status. And yes, there are problems for Black and brown children in school. I mean, I've been reading about this for a really long time. Expulsion rates are higher, detention rates are higher, dropout rates are higher, but that is more contributed to culture and socioeconomic status than it is to somebody being racist towards you. Teachers want to see you succeed. I can't imagine. I've never had a teacher in my life, and I've never met a teacher in my life that has ever been like, you know what, I wish that kid would just go absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, and it's objectively true that kids learn at different paces,
Yes.
and intelligence is a real thing that exists. And people, it's a spectrum, and people exist on different, independent of race, by the way. So to say that like everyone learns at the same pace is like a cookie cutter, that's ideological, and it is malpractice on the part of educators to take a cookie cutter approach to teaching kids. And by the way, if you're so worried about equity, like when you take one approach to everybody, then you're depriving students who are able to advance more quickly, even if that happens to be a Black or brown student. You're depriving them of the chance to advance as quickly as they could. And so, yeah, it's just a nonsensical argument.
There are two possible solutions to this perceived problem that she's put forth. One is an affirmative action stance where you put Black and brown children and neurodivergent children in a gifted program that they are not fit to be in, which obviously is horrible and not going to go well, and it's going to deteriorate their grades. Right. Or you cut off the gifted program, you cut off everybody at the knees, and you have gifted students who have a higher intellect, who are not being challenged in school, and you put them at risk of not doing well at school or even leaving the school system because they're not being challenged enough. So the two solutions to this perceived problems are not solutions at all.
And that's exactly what we see in places like Harvard and Yale, and where they have affirmative action programs. The students who are admitted on the basis of their skin color, who are underqualified relative to other students, are competing with students that are exceptionally qualified, and they lag behind in their class. They often transfer their majors. They often fail and have higher stress, and you're setting them up for failure through the affirmative action in the first place.
All I've been able to realize going and talking to, so many people, especially being now on my book tour and talking to so many, hundreds of students and everything. The number one thing that is indicative of someone who's going to be gifted or very well learned or whatever it might be is someone who reads. Reading is the number one thing in the entire world to know if someone is going to be very intelligent. Someone who doesn't put time into reading, which most people don't, you are not going to be that intelligent. Most people who are the smartest people in the world, especially when you're growing up and young and you're looking for activities to do, the kids who read a lot were gifted and talented. The kids who didn't read were not gifted and talented. Anyone who reads a lot is gifted and talented.
And there's so many different factors to it. It's reading comprehension, it's math comprehension, it's pattern recognition. I remember taking my gifted test and being surprised that it wasn't just straightforward like math questions and reading prompts. It was look at these sets of blocks and create a pattern out of them and see which one goes against it. Like there's so many different factors to just intellect that are measured by a gifted test that have nothing to do with race. But nonetheless, this girl is probably going to keep making TikToks about it, and we'll be able to debunk them over and over. But Will, again, thank you.
Well, I'm very surprised you remember your gifted test.
I do, because it was seen as like a...
Well, yours was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Oh my gosh.
Alma was like 12
First of
years
all,
old, so she took
my
hers
gifted
the
test
other
was
day.
when I was 7, and I remember it being like a special day because obviously I went to public school, and they would come into the classroom. It was like gifted testing day. Like everybody felt like, oh my gosh, the adrenaline rush. Am I going to get called to get gifted tested? And you get called and you go into this room with your counselor and you sit down and you do the test with them, and they're like watching you the whole time. It felt like something out of like, I don't know, like out of Divergent or something where you pick your faction. It's crazy. So yeah, that's why I remember it. It's just a memory that sticks out. But
the fact that you
anyways,
can remember that for a whole 10 years since you were 7 years
Oh
old
my
is just
gosh.
really impressive. You must be gifted.
oh, the age jokes. I love them. I love
Yeah,
them.
no, you're definitely gifted, Amla.
Yeah,
Amla, every
thank you.
time I see you, I'm like, that girl's she's definitely gifted.
I know.
I mean,
know.
she does get lots of gifts in the mail from our audience and stuff. So definitely
It's
gifted.
just an effect that I have on people. I'm very gifted.
You guys want to see something cool?
Show me something cool.
Oh, look, I'll show
Still
you.
on the air. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm
Will.
like-
What are you showing?
I know. Wait, can you? You see that right there?
Is it a bruise?
I
What
don't
is
know
that?
if it's showing up, if it'll show up. Yeah, it's a bruise. I went skeet shooting yesterday in
Oh,
Tampa, doing like massive skeet shooting. It was so much fun. I've never done it before.
I saw
And now
the
I have this
videos.
massive, it hurts like hell.
how did you do?
Ow. But I didn't do very well at first
Okay.
because I have very bad eyesight. But then eventually I figured out how to do it. And it's so much fun. We should go when I get back.
We
It's
should.
so much fun.
I have horrible eyesight too, but I love to shoot guns. So
Well, I'll keep you, make sure you're looking actually down the range. I'll make sure your gifted and talented status is down the range.
my marksmanship is pretty good. I think you'll be surprised. Maybe we'll do a vlog out of it of us going to the gun range. I think
would
you'll
love
be
to
very
see y'all
surprised.
compete.
I'm a good.
We used to go to Louisiana and do the clay pigeons and stuff.
I hit him where it hurts.
Well, I'm like, yeah, in that police training, you shot the guy in the nuts.
I did. Oh my gosh, come on now. I know a little bit about a little bit. Anyways, Will, thank you so much for begging me to be on the show because it was really a pleasure this time. I think this is one of your best performances yet. I think the more that you beg, the more we'll put you on and the better the performance will be.
Yeah, no, Will Witt Live was great today. Thanks so much for coming on, guys. If you guys like my content, make sure you follow me on social media
Great.
at the Will Witt.
Absolutely.
If you want to hear more Will Witt Live, it's on Spotify, podcasts,
Absolutely.
all that stuff.
Okay,
Also,
guys,
you can
that's
go.
enough.
Make sure you go
Yeah,
into.
yeah, yeah.
No,
That's
wait,
enough.
no, but
That's
actually,
enough.
no, wait. Go into the description of this video if you want to find out where I'm going on my book tour, all the places, be able to buy my book, all that. Go to the link in the description. I'm going to be going across the entire country for about 2 more weeks. Would love to see you guys at my book tour stop, so check it out in the description.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. We'll probably have you on the show at some point again this week, so be on the lookout. Will be back. We're not going to keep him away, and he's in his chair if you guys want to see. This is where he's here in spirit. So we're keeping Will on the set in spirit. So bye, Will, and we'll see you again soon on the show.
See you guys on the show sometime. See ya.
Our check-in with Will Witt. It's nice to have Will on the show
What a
every
great
now
guest.
and then. What a great guest. I mean, if you guys, by popular demand, if you want him back, you let us know and we may make it happen. But he's already annoying enough with begging us to be on the show as it is.
I know. Amelin Taylor Live. I mean, your name's not even on the show, bro. So,
Right.
If you want to
So-
be a guest, you just have to have something interesting to offer.
Now let's get into a story that's on the headline today, and that is the George Floyd Memorial statue was vandalized in New York City. Here's a look. They're getting it all cleaned up here. Police obtained video that shows a male vandal ducking behind a nearby statue of the late Representative John Lewis and fiddling with something in a backpack around 10 a.m., says the policeman spokesperson. But the footage shows him taking off on a skateboard while throwing the paint on Floyd's bust. The spokesperson says police are not planning on releasing the video. So here's George Floyd with the paint on him. This is an interesting development. Am I surprised by this development? I will be honest, absolutely not. I'm not surprised by this development because we have placed into martyrdom a man who chose to do criminal acts, not only in the moments leading up to his, albeit maybe could have been avoided death, but in his life in general.
I just think it's interesting that somehow all of a sudden vandalizing statues is a terrible thing and very newsworthy.
Right.
I didn't see much of that last year.
You know, that's actually a very good point. I didn't think about that, Taylor. Yeah, because when it comes to actual stories and statues of American history, actual memorials, some may recall the 9/11 memorial that was vandalized this past year, that's totally okay. That's acceptable. Because we're fighting against racism and xenophobia. But when the statue of George Floyd, again, a man who was an avid criminal within his life, gets vandalized, suddenly we're all up in arms about it.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how much more there is to say about this.
There's not.
I mean, I think we can say neither one of us would have supported the construction of this memorial in the first place. And so it's hard to feel much outrage at the fact that it's being vandalized. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much more there is to say about it, really.
It should have never been constructed. It's
But
constructed
the
in
hypocrisy
conjunction.
is glaring. You know,
Right,
when
it is.
Everyone's freaking out about this now in the mainstream media that, oh, how terrible that someone would vandalize a statue. And where were you a year ago when they were doing this to George Washington? To George Washington, by
Right.
the way, who was not a criminal.
Yeah. Tearing down stuff at the Lincoln Memorial, tearing down just founding fathers who had nothing to do with anything that people are screaming about today, tearing down statues of people who were simply white men just because they were white men. And everybody was okay with that. That's totally fine. That's us restructuring American history. But when it happens to George Floyd's statue, which should have never been never been erected, never been made in this New York Square next to one of Breonna Taylor as well. Suddenly it's a big deal to deface statues.
Yeah, and just to harp on that point for a second, I mean, the reason that there is an asymmetry to the outrage is that the George Floyd in his death was used as a tool to advance the anti-American agenda.
Yep.
And that same sentiment is what drove the vandalism of the George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, its founding father statues around the country a year ago. So whenever it's on the basis of whether the statue in question is vandalizing it is denigrating toward America, then that's okay. But when it is vandalized on the basis of the fact that it is elevating something that shouldn't be elevated, then now you're wrong because you're slowing down our effort to denigrate America.
Right. It's amazing. The hypocrisy is an amazing thing. Hypocrisy is a hell of a drug, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, we figured we'd cover that story really quickly. Now we're going to move on to another story here. And this is one that involves Andrew Yang. You may recognize the name because he did run for president in this past presidential election. Andrew Yang really made his claim to fame as a man running to push for UBI, or Universal Basic Income. But now Andrew has come out. I don't know why I called him Andy, like I know him. Andrew has come out. You know old Andy. You know Andy and his antics. Andy and his UBI. You know that guy. He's come out with an essay, or an opinion piece, I guess you would say, talking about breaking free from his identification with the Democratic Party or the left, and he's now decided to go in as an independent. Now, I don't want to talk about this too much. Obviously, we're not super big fans of Andrew Yang's policies or his politics, but he says something interesting in this. And it's something that I wish more people would recognize when it comes to politics, when it comes to our elites, when it comes to bureaucrats. And let's read some of this essay that he wrote. My goal is to do as much as I can to advance our society. There are phenomenal public servants doing great work every day, but our system is stuck. It is stuck in the part because polarization is getting worse than ever. Many of the people I know are doing all the good they can, but their impact is constrained. Now that I'm not a member of one party or another, I feel like I can be more honest about both the system and the people in it. The key reform that is necessary to help unlock our system is a combination of open primaries and ranked choice, blah, blah, blah. He goes into different changes he wants to make. But he admits something here. Right down here. I'm not very ideological. I'm practical. Making partisan arguments, particularly expressing what I often see as performative sentiment, is sometimes uncomfortable for me. I often think, okay, what can we actually do to solve the problem? I'm pretty sure there are others who feel the same way I do. I've seen politicians publicly eviscerate each other and then act collegial and friendly backstage a few minutes later. A lot of it is theater. I've also had people publicly attack me and then text or call me privately to make sure that we were all cool. It just had to be done for appearances. This is interesting. This is kind of like in The Wizard of Oz when they finally get there. They finally get to the Emerald City and they pull back the curtain and it's just a regular man behind the curtain, and they realized that much of what they were seeing was just theater. And that's exactly what happens in our politics. It's all political theater. It's all political theater. And I say this on the show all the time, but the bureaucrats who get on stage and they talk about all these problems that we're experiencing in America are often not in the interest of finding solutions, because their job is based around finding problems, perpetuating those problems, and then saying they have something to do to solve it. So to have somebody who's so far left-leaning, and again, I don't agree with politically, legislatively at all, come out and say much of what we see, if not all of what we see in regard to politics as theater, is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's encouraging to see a little bit of sanity from someone, leaving the left or the Democratic Party in this case. I don't know what more to say about it. I think that there is probably a parallel between what we were talking about earlier with celebrities and stuff who have, a snippet of common sense left, who are willing to call out how dumb and partisan and just ideological things have become, that they're willing to speak their minds and say honestly. And I think we need more people to just say, you know what, we don't, not everything has to be partisan, not everything has to be political. You shouldn't, if you're 1% left of center, 1% right of center, that shouldn't lock in every single one of your opinions and have them predictable. We need, like he said, he feels like he can be more honest now because he's not partisan. I think we just need more of that in general. We need more conversations about, and he said he's a solutions oriented. we need to have more people who are willing to step outside of partisan lines and really talk about solutions and ideas themselves, because everything is so gridlocked and everything is so it all has to do with theater, and politicians are in people's pockets and all this type of stuff. And like, it's so refreshing to just talk about ideas on their own merits and talk about solutions on their own merits.
Right.
And there needs to be a lot more of that.
Yeah, it's refreshing, and it's hope-inducing, I guess. Although hope is really not the most important thing. I used to think hope was so important, and then I heard Dennis Prager talk about how hope is really not that important at all, and that, you know, the men who stormed, you know, Normandy Beach, the men of D-Day, they didn't feel hope. They knew exactly what was going to happen, but they still continued to fight anyways, and that's what we have to do. But to see somebody who was so left-leaning, and somebody who I would have thought would be extremely ideological, come out and say, no, I'm not, and I think we can encourage other people to not do the same. He's not saying that people need to follow in his footsteps or anything, but I like to see people who I once viewed as very extreme come out and say something that is completely rational. And I think it is a sign of the times that everything around us is getting so extreme and so irrational and so insane that there's bound to be people who recognize that and step away from it.
Yeah, you don't have to play by the rules that are already set in place, as far as like, you must be of this group or else, you know, you don't, like, it is a courageous act to stand up for your own thoughts and your own beliefs, regardless of whether I agree with you or disagree with you. It is a laudable, commendable act to say, you know what, I'm thinking for myself, and I'm going to evaluate issues on their own merits. I'm going to look at evidence, look at facts, and talk about ideas on their own merits, and get away from partisanship that interferes with my ability to do with that. So props if that, and I encourage more people to follow not necessarily Andrew Yang's policies and ideas, but follow in the footsteps of not having all of your opinions prepackaged or associating with groups that don't allow you to think for yourself.
Right, guys, not the policy, just the general opinion on this one. One more story here before we get into Dear Will and Amala, our advice segment, or I should say Dear Taylor and Amala. Here is the newest Playboy. Let's take a look. For Playboy to have a male on the cover is a huge deal for the LGBTQ community, for my brown people community, and it's all so surreal. A total is this even effing happening right now type of vibe, and I'm so pretty. Wow.
Playboy? More like gay boy.
Oh, God.
You knew it. Someone had to say it. Will wasn't here to say it.
Yeah, Will was not here to say it. Will would have been the one to say it.
Specifically, we talked about doing this story with Will, and she was like, no, we can't let Will talk about this because he's just going to say something inappropriate.
Yes, yeah. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this young man here, he's a man by the name of Bretman Rock. He became famous by hopping into the makeup space as a makeup artist on all social media platforms, and is now the first male to be featured on the cover of Playboy. Now, when we think about this, I mean, I don't want to think about this through the lane of disparaging people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, there's no reason to do that. It doesn't get you anywhere. And for argument's sake, it just makes no sense. What I will talk about is I'll sort of take the Daniel Craig position. Daniel Craig, you know him as the actor who plays 007 James Bond, who said, you know what? Why do we need to create a female James Bond? Why not just create characters that women can play, instead of changing male characters that have always been the way that they are to placate to people's delusions in regard to this. And that's exactly what I feel like Playboy is happening. I'll be interested to see what the sales are on this edition. Maybe high because it's the first time that it's ever done it and people will have it as memorabilia and things like that. But I imagine towards their typical audience, the sales on this Playboy edition are not going to be great.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, why, like to Daniel Craig's question, why don't we just create alternatives for people who are interested in those alternatives, rather than swapping something that was made for men into, you know, placing something in but I'll tell you exactly why. It's because it makes an ideological point, or it pushes the ideology that they want to push, and says, oh, we're taking over the norms, we're erasing them, and we're taking over with our ideology in the culture. And so to that end, that is why they do it this way. That's why they have to rewrite Ghostbusters to be female, and they have to make Bond a female. It's like the whole point is the Cultural Revolution. Right. The whole point is turning everything upside down. If it doesn't do that, then the commonsensical thing is, just make your own alternative and build in a separate lane. But that they're not interested in that. They want the revolution, and they want to do, and the only way to do that is by tearing down the existing things. But overall, my reaction to this article, or this
post
happening, this news story is, I don't care. Because I don't care about Playboy magazine, not a reader, don't care about what they're doing. But what I do care about is what the implication this has as a tentpole moment in our culture and what it means, which is the ideology. The revolution marches on, and they're going after this cultural revolution everywhere they possibly can.
Yeah, you make a great point. It's not that I'm a Playboy customer and I care all that much that Bretman Rock is on the cover of Playboy. It's the underpinnings of it. It points to a larger societal truth, and that's something that needs to be talked about. And I don't think it needs to be discussed with outrage, because guess what? Your outrage fuels Playboy sales. That's what happens. They go, yes, hallelujah. I knew exactly what this was going to do, and now everybody's talking about Playboy.
Co-parter, Amala.
Yeah, right. Co-parter.
You're so triggered by this. Why are you so triggered by a gay man on Playboy? Right. I can just see it now. Like, we're just sitting here like, we're mentioning it because it's an obvious attempt to usurp the regular cultural order of things, and it's part of this march of ideology. So we're going to call it out and say and recognize it for what it is. But yes, this is me very outraged right now. I'm just seething with rage.
Oh, extremely. But the ideological underpinning is there, and it's just something to discuss and talk about in a greater context, rather than this micro occurrence of having a male Playboy. It's really not that big of a deal. Now, next is our final segment of the day, and that is Dear Will and Amala, or again, Dear Taylor and Amala, since Will is not here. You guys submitted your questions on Twitter and down below in the active YouTube chat, and we compiled them, put them on our doc as we were running the show today. Now, here's our first one. Dear Will and Amala, how do I formulate a coherent argument without getting in a screaming match with the leftists? That's all it seems they want to do is yell and scream. This was submitted by Blue the Raptor. I have an immediate answer for this one. When we're starting to, I wouldn't even call it an argument. So let's call it a debate. When we're starting to debate with somebody who doesn't agree with us on an issue or ideologically, the best thing that you can do is first establish a calm temperament with both sides and make sure that nobody breaches that. The second you breach that, you need to chill out and stop whatever debating or argument you're doing. But start every argument or debate by establishing your terms and then defining those terms. Because if you aren't already functioning through that lens, you're bound to create a contentious moment where you're yelling and screaming at each other because you don't understand each other. So I recently had this occurrence at a bar. A guy walked up to me. He asked me what I was doing with my life, what my career was, and I explained to him how I worked at PragerU. And this was an older gentleman, and he starts talking to me about his views on abortion and how he is extremely pro-choice. And he starts trying to go back and forth with me about this issue, and I keep stopping and stopping and stopping. And I say, well, wait, before we even go any further in this argument, what do you define life as? And he didn't really have an answer for it. What do you define life as? And of course, he views a baby as a fetus that is non-viable, and I view that as a child that is a real life. If we cannot agree on those terms, first and foremost, before even getting into the argument, there's no room for a true debate on that issue. So that's what I would recommend you do. Define your terms, see if the definitions are clear. If they're not clear, come to a clear definition, and then get into the debate. And as soon as it gets contentious, dip.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, until you've set the parameters of a conversation, this is why it's much easier to have meaningful conversations with friends, with people that you have a history with people who are learned in the same field and domain as you, because there's a lot less catch up you have to do to get on the same page so that you can actually have a meaningful conversation and exchange of thoughts and ideas, and then those ideas build on one another. That's why I think to some extent this show works well, because we like you, Will, and I have similar foundation that we're working from, so that when we're talking about things, that we don't have to spend all this time defining our terms and what are the rules of our conversation and where are you coming from versus where I'm coming from. But when you're having an argument with a stranger and you have zero context, then you have to lay down the groundwork for that conversation, or else nothing productive is going to happen. And so that's a place to start. But I would say the other thing is just take the Will Witt approach, which is ask questions and make them, make your argument in the form of questions and say, well, like Amala was doing this at the bar too, but okay, well, how do you define life? Okay, well, usually you can insert your argument in the question form. So, well, what about this? Well, what about this?
Right.
But get their response. And when you are formulating it on the base, like formulating your argument in form of questions, you're making them think critically about their own argument and define it better. Even if you're, rather than saying, well, I need you to define your terms. So what are your terms? Define them, lay them out for me. You're encouraging the conversation by asking thoughtful questions. So that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. And think about the difference between making a statement and making a question. A question is inquisitive. It's normally very warm and it's just curious. Now, if you make a statement of define this, that sounds very assertive and automatically you're operating at, oh, I need to be on the defense with this person. Questions are much more warm. Next question. Speaking of questions.
Got to plug Will's book right there, though.
Yes, we do.
How to have those questions. Check the link in our bio for Will's book tour and where to get his book. How to Win Friends and Influence Enemies.
Yeah, if you want to meet Will in person, you can get tickets down below in the description. So please do that. Next one, Dear Will and Amala from Michael Quaid. My question, how come Will is not as cool as Amala? I mean, this is a quick answer. It's simply impossible for Will to do that. That's all I have.
Amala was in the gifted track in Cool School.
Right. Will was on the short bus. That's my answer. That one's a quick hit him out of the park.
Michael Quaid, if you have any relation to Dennis Quaid, that's cool.
That is
Day After Tomorrow.
That is very cool.
Great movie.
Hopefully you do. Next, Dear Will and Amala from Greg Baker. Does PragerU accept money from Russia? Well, it depends on what you mean by accepting money from Russia. Do you mean accepting money from the Russian government, like as some sort of collusion hoax thing? No. Do we accept money from people who are Russian, who like PragerU because we are an international media company? Absolutely.
We take no money from Russia.
It's no collusion from Russia.
Rubles.
Vodka. No, you'll see people who super chat us down below and it'll say 200 rubes, RUB. That's 200 rubles. That's from Russia. So absolutely, we do accept money.
Yeah, I guess so. We have super fans watching in Russia who super chat. So
yes, we do.
We love that Russian money.
Yeah, if you're in Russia watching right now, comment vodka down below. Sorry, guys. Next one, Dear Will and Amala from Nora E. How do you feel about teen dating? And Nora asked this because she is a teenager. I'm assuming she's asking from like a conservative standpoint. Do you think that teens should date? Taylor, do you have any immediate thoughts on this question?
I don't like big blanket rules on stuff like this. I think the best thing that you can do as a teenager is know how dumb you are. And that's the hardest thing to do as a teenager because you don't think you're dumb. But, you're very susceptible, especially as a girl, to be, swept up into infatuation as a teenager. And like that can just lead to heartbreaks and you can do things that you regret. So basically, like you need to just, if you were going to venture into the water, like I think it's important for young people to learn about what it's like to interact with the opposite sex. It's important for young people. Like if the alternative is no, you can never date, and like you just end up having to repress everything and pretend like you're not attracted to the opposite sex or anything like that. Like I don't think that's healthy.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a particularly dangerous time to try to expose yourself to that if you're not. So my advice is be super self-aware, be very skeptical of your own feelings, and also stay close to people who you know and trust and who love you, and make sure that like others who know you and know that person know what's going on, and stay close to them and keep bouncing their ideas off or what you're doing off of them and what you're feeling and all that type of stuff. Like stay close to the people who love you, whether that's your parents or best friends or anything like that. And I would say just be extremely, extremely cautious.
That's great advice. Yeah, I will tell you from a personal standpoint, I started dating when I was 17 years old. And if I could go back and take that dating experience back, which lasted quite a while, like 3 years, I would take that dating experience back. But because it was so horrible. But you think now like, okay, because I went through that dating experience, I learned a lot about what to look for in the guy that I want. I learned a lot about red flags. I learned a lot about the way that I should be treated. So in some ways, I think dating is good for people in their later teens, but do so, like Taylor said, with self-awareness. Do so in a sense that you're not feeding into infatuation. I think one of the worst things that a lot of teen girls and boys do, but specifically girls, is they find a guy that they're interested in, they start dating that guy, and it's completely filled with infatuation. And that's when you start cutting off your friends. It's when you start cutting off your family, because you are just so...
No one understands our love.
Right. And really, if you had gone to somebody and said, oh, well, yesterday he said this to me, or yesterday he did this to me. Your mom or your grandmother or your best friend would say, oh, girl, that's not how you're supposed to be treated. But so often we're so infatuated with the person that we're with that we let that cloud our judgment. So sure, teen dating is fine. Do it in a tame way. Do it in a not too serious way. And do it in a way that helps you look out for what you truly want in a partner.
Yeah, don't take it too seriously too. Like,
yes.
Okay, you may meet the love of your life when you're 16 or something, but
right.
that's less and less common these days, especially in the culture that we live in. That is not, people get into their early, mid, even late 20s and are still not looking for serious relationships in today's day and age.
Yep.
And so that culture is naturally going to be manifesting earlier on in life with our younger generations. And so, you have to understand that that we live in a different era now, and you're not likely to find someone with the same values as you, who has the same intent as you in relationships when you're 15 years old.
Right.
And the last thing I'll say too is that it is extremely preferable to take wisdom's word for it than to learn the hard way. And what I mean by that is if you go into this without wisdom and just throw your heart into it and run full steam with whatever feels right and whatever, boy sweeps you off your feet or whatever, your odds are you're going to end up with a broken heart. You're going to end up with a lot more pain and suffering than you would have had to if you would have just been wise in the first place. But it's also the hardest thing to do in the world is to take wisdom's word for it, because when you're young, you're always like, oh, I can just dive into this full steam, nothing bad could happen. But there's a naivete that you have when you're young that's just a natural part of life.
Man.
And it's so hard to take wisdom's word for it, but just trust me, be wise.
Giving me PTSD. I can recall this. It's like when I was dating this said person, I was reached out to all from friends, family. They're like, is this okay? Like, is this fine? Is everything okay? Do you want to say anything? And you're in that infatuation stage where you're like, no, I'm not going to say anything. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I don't care what you're saying to me. Everything's good. We're in love. Blah, blah. But it's not the case. So yeah, in terms of teen dating, date with low expectations, but not low standards. That's where good. I stand on it. Next one, Dear Will and Amala. This is from Gabia or Gabija. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Why hasn't PragerU left California? You all keep giving up money to the corrupt government. We've had this discussion so many times. We'll make this short. We are where the fight is. The riots, the social media, the lockdowns, the mandates, they're all happening right outside our door. And as conservatives, it's very easy to leave and concede ground. And I would be lying if I told you I have not considered it, especially with everything happening in the state right now. But there's something to be said for staying here, being in the fight, being attached to really the pulse of what's happening in California, as our CEO, Marissa, would say, and fighting it where it's at.
Yeah, we're out here experiencing how bad it can get so we can be the canaries in the coal mine to the rest of the country, saying, for the love of God, do not let this happen in your state. Now, that's not explicitly why we're here, but yeah, for a lot more on this, you can listen to Amala's talk with Dave last week. That was Dave Rubin. That episode was Thursday last week. Extremely good discussion about all this, and is California even worth saving?
But yeah, we have so many discussions about it. Watch any show and we talk about it.
We ask ourselves the same question daily is basically the answer.
Daily, yeah, and it's an ongoing struggle. You wrestle with the idea of where you should be and where the fight is, but right now we are here. That's just the nature of where we are. There's nothing we can do to change that. It's an objective truth. We're here. We continue to be here. Next one, Dear Will and Amala. As a teen boy, how do I talk to girls? In the current climate, it seems as though if you're nice to a girl, you're a simp. Alfie Davies. Now, Taylor, obviously I'm going to lean on you a little bit for this, but I think there has been a major shift, and maybe this is because even though the culture tries to pervasively push that women do not want masculine men, to push the idea that there's such a thing as toxic masculinity, and we've now developed the word simp because of that whole cultural shift, women still don't want that. And I think simp is attached not to being a nice man. I don't think being a nice guy makes you a simp whatsoever. I think simp is attached to being an effeminate man, being a more feminine male.
Yeah, simping is like, I don't even deserve a moment of your time, but if you would be so kind as to just let me ask you this one question, and you don't even have to say yes, but that's simping. It's like this pathetic sort of, doting that you're not, but the key thing that's missing in simping is a strong sense of confidence and self-worth and purpose and like decisiveness.
Right.
None of that is there if you're a simp. And that, but those things that I just listed are exactly what women are attracted to. So
yeah. It's true. You can tell, like, when a man is being kind to you and nice, but he's still confident in himself and reassured in his own abilities, you can tell that from a man. I think you venture into what we call simp territory when you are being nice to a girl with the intention of receiving validation from her, and it's validation that you don't already have for yourself, and then taking her attention and using that to boost your own confidence. Yep. That's what I view a simp to be.
Exactly. And like to the contrary, like you can be a nice, but, you know, strong and confident and masculine man. Right. You know, but being like masculine does not mean you're being a jerk to women or treating them badly. And what it means is that you have a strong sense of self-worth independent of the woman's opinion of you. And they can pick up on that. If you don't care what they think, that is what they're attracted to, because now you're a confident, freestanding person who's not living or dying by their opinion.
Exactly right.
So the best advice is be confident, know who you are, be competent, be strong, build up your resume as a man, as a human being. And the more competence you have, the more confident you should be, and the more attractive women you'll be.
Yeah, that statement of look in, not up, it works for everything, I feel like. Look inward. If you find the confidence in yourself, that's great. You shouldn't look outward to find it. We have 2 more questions here. First one, Dear Will and Amala, this is from the Hoodie Guy. What do you think will happen if we never get Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp back? Floodgates open for Twitter? Well, we have Facebook and Instagram back now. That happened through the duration of this stream. But breaking! It's back up and it's back running, and people are satiated again with their social media tendencies.
Hot Scott's modeling career goes on.
Right. The IG baddie that is Hot Scott.
He's right here. We don't have his camera today. Sorry, guys.
We don't. Sorry. Now, what if it never came back? What would we be looking at?
I'm firmly of the opinion that if it never came back, something else would pop up in its stead immediately.
Maybe Locals made by Dave Rubin that you guys should be on. You guys should be on Locals.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it would be like a refreshing thing because they have all this built up institutional sort of, you know, they're just embedded in as an institution in our culture and in our society. So it'd be great if they were just like nuked and wiped off the map and we had a clean start and they're not able to censor your feed or like, you know, determine what you're able to see online and we can start from scratch. And maybe there's more free speech, maybe there's not. But anyway, it's not happening. So
wouldn't it be nice to know that the Giants can fall? And so far we don't know that. And right now maybe they were down for around a couple hours, but no, the Giants have not fallen. And yeah, I'd be interested to see, as just a social experiment, if all social media was wiped out today, and I'm talking every single platform, and we rebuild social media, would it be rebuilt just as toxic as it is today? Would it be better? Would it be worse? I don't know. But I think for a short period of time, if social media was just alleviated from the world for a little bit, we'd be better off. This is our last question here. Dear Will and Amala, from Claire Ramsey, are y'all dressing up for Halloween? I am.
Yeah, but I haven't picked anything yet. I don't know.
I'm in between. I'm thinking, I've got a lot of different ideas. I've thought Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Love that movie. I've thought She-Go from Kim Possible. I've thought Raven from Teen Titans. I've got a lot of different ideas.
That's So Raven.
No, not from That's So
I don't know Teen Titans, but I remember
I thought Raven Simone from That's So Raven. Yeah, no,
I'm twitching.
The ideas are
no premonition.
Or you could do, I don't know. Oh, Taylor, who do you even look like?
Well, okay, so my wife does a different Britney Spears every year, like she's Toxic Britney one year, and then Hit Me Baby One More Time Britney, like from whatever. So we have not done the Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears like denim suit
Oh, you have to do that. So, you have to.
Yeah, so I think that might be the move this year, but it's surprisingly difficult to find a denim cowboy hat on the internet. I've searched.
I think maybe you can get a cowboy hat and just
spray paint it denim.
Hot glue denim onto it.
Oh,
from your pants.
That's too much work.
It's too much work. Ansley will do it. She's crafty.
Yeah, she's very crafty.
She's crafty.
So.
Well, guys, yeah, we will keep you posted on what we actually decide to dress up as on Halloween. We'll probably show it on the show, or at least on our Instagram and our other social media. I want to thank you guys for watching Will and Amala Live today on this very glorious Monday. I have an event to go to where I'm going to be doing a speech on homelessness tonight, so I got to get going. Please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single day when we go live at 2:30 PST, 5:30 Eastern. You can listen to us on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Leave us a 5-star review on all of those platforms to let us know that you love the show. Let everybody else know that you love the show and that you are unashamed to love our show. Also, if you'd like to be texted to let you know when we go live, you can text live to 41776. That is LIVE to 41776. We will be back tomorrow. We'll hopefully have Will on throughout the stream and maybe a couple of guests this week as well. So we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.